The sky above New York burned with colors that should not exist. Ships the size of mountains hung in the atmosphere, their surfaces rippling like oil on water. They had arrived 3 days ago, and the world had not stopped screaming since. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of what used to be the United Nations building. Around her, soldiers moved through the debris with the mechanical precision of people who had stopped thinking about survival and started thinking about last stands. The aliens called themselves the Kalreth Empire, and they had given humanity 1 week to surrender. That week was almost over. "Commander, we've lost contact with Beijing," Lieutenant Morrison reported, his voice flat. "London went dark 20 minutes ago. Mumbai stopped transmitting an hour before that." Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Kalreth weapons were beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply unmade things, turning matter into something else, something wrong that hurt to look at. Entire cities had been transformed into twisted sculptures of impossible geometry. "What about Moscow?" she asked. "Still fighting," Morrison replied, "but they're requesting immediate assistance. They have maybe 6 hours left." 6 hours? Sarah almost laughed. What could humanity do in 6 hours that it had not already tried in 3 days? Their most advanced fighters melted before they could get within firing range. Nuclear weapons detonated harmlessly against Kalreth shields. The enemy had not even bothered to land ground troops. They were exterminating humanity from orbit like someone spraying insects. "Commander," a new voice called out. It was Dr. James Rodriguez, head of what remained of Earth's Emergency Science Council. He was running. Actually running, and Sarah had never seen the old scientist move faster than a leisurely walk. "Commander, we found something." "Project Titan, it's real," Sarah frowned. "What are you talking about?" Rodriguez pulled out a tablet, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. 30 years ago, a mining operation in Siberia found something buried under the permafrost. Something old. The Russian government sealed the site immediately and classified everything. They called it Project Titan. "And this helps us how?" Sarah asked, feeling her patience wear thin. She did not have time for ancient mysteries. "Because it's not natural," Rodriguez said urgently. "It's a machine, Commander. A machine bigger than anything we've ever built, buried 2 miles under the ice. And according to the data we just recovered from Moscow's servers, it's been dormant for millions of years. They've been studying it in secret ever since they found it." Sarah stared at him. "Millions of years? That's impossible. Humans have only been around for a few 100,000 years." "Exactly," Rodriguez said, his eyes wild with excitement and terror. "Whatever built that machine, Commander, it wasn't us. Or rather, it wasn't modern humanity. The structure contains human DNA markers in its organic components. Somehow, impossibly, it's human, just not from any human civilization we know about." A new alarm blared across the command center. Sarah turned to see the tactical display light up with fresh warnings. More Kalreth ships were entering the atmosphere above Moscow. "The city had minutes now, not hours. Can we use it?" Sarah demanded. "This machine, can we use it as a weapon?" Rodriguez hesitated. The Russians were afraid to activate it. They could not understand how it worked. The technology is so far beyond ours that they could not even identify what most of the components were for. But Commander, they did figure out one thing. It responds to human DNA. It was made by humans, and it will only activate for humans. Sarah made her decision in seconds. "Get me a transport to Siberia now." "Commander, you can't." "I can and I will," Sarah interrupted. "If there's even a chance that machine can help us, we have to take it. Lieutenant Morrison, you're in command here. Dr. Rodriguez, you're with me." The flight to Siberia took 4 hours on the fastest transport humanity had left. They flew low under the Kalreth scanning range, through valleys and over frozen wastelands. Sarah spent the entire flight reading the classified files Rodriguez had brought. The machine had been found completely by accident. Miners drilling for resources had broken through into a massive chamber that should not exist. Inside, they found it waiting. The reports described it as a sphere, perfect and black, suspended in the center of a cavern that seemed to have been carved from the earth with mathematical precision. Early analysis suggested it was a power source. Later studies indicated it might be a computer. Eventually, the Russian scientists had to admit they had no idea what it was, only that it was clearly designed by intelligence and that it contained preserved human biological material woven into its structure in ways that made no scientific sense. The most disturbing part was the age. Carbon dating was useless. Geological surveys of the surrounding rock suggested the machine had been there for at least 5 million years, possibly longer. Long before modern humans existed, long before any human civilization should have been capable of building anything more complex than stone tools. The transport touched down at the research facility built around the excavation site. Most of the staff had evacuated when the invasion began, but a skeleton crew remained. They led Sarah and Rodriguez down into the earth, through tunnels lined with equipment that hummed with power. "We've kept it on minimal life support," one of the technicians explained, "just enough to keep it from degrading further. We've never dared to fully activate it." They emerged into the main chamber and Sarah stopped breathing. The sphere hung in the center of the vast space, exactly as the reports described. It was perhaps 50 meters in diameter, its surface so perfectly black it seemed to absorb light itself. But that was not what made Sarah's heart race. Around the sphere, carved into the walls of the chamber, were symbols. Not Russian, not any human language she recognized, but somehow, impossibly, she could almost understand them. "The symbols," she whispered. "What do they say?" "We don't know," Rodriguez admitted. "But they're consistent with some of the oldest archaeological finds we've ever discovered. Cave paintings, stone tablets, artifacts that predate known civilization. We've always assumed they were primitive art. Now we're not so sure." Sarah walked forward slowly, drawn to the machine. Her footsteps echoed in the massive chamber. As she approached, something changed. The sphere began to emit a faint hum, barely audible but felt deep in the chest. The symbols on the walls started to glow with a soft blue light. "Commander, step back," Rodriguez shouted in alarm, but Sarah could not step back. She felt something reaching out to her, something vast and old and tired. The machine was waking up and it recognized her. Not her specifically, but what she was, human, descendant, inheritor. The surface of the sphere rippled like water. Displays appeared, showing star maps Sarah had never seen before, mathematical equations that hurt to look at, and images of Earth from space but wrong, different, with continents in the wrong places and cities of light where there should only be ocean. A voice spoke. Not through sound, but directly in her mind. It used words she did not know but understood perfectly. Threat detected, initiating defensive protocols. Guardian Unit 774 coming online. The sphere began to spin, faster and faster, and the entire facility shook. Sarah fell to her knees as raw power filled the chamber. The machine was not just activating. It was transforming, unfolding, becoming something else entirely. Rodriguez grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but Sarah could only stare in awe and terror at what humanity had just unleashed. Above them, penetrating through miles of rock and ice, the machine's sensors reached out and found the Kalreth ships. It found them, and it recognized what they were. Prey. The machine's consciousness spread through the facility like water finding cracks in stone. Sarah felt it touching her mind, reading her memories, learning everything about modern humanity in seconds. It was not painful, but it was overwhelming. She saw flashes of things that were not her own memories, cities that gleamed like stars, ships that moved between worlds, wars fought across the darkness of space, and she saw Mars. Not the dead red planet humanity knew, but Mars alive. Mars covered in oceans and forests. Mars with cities that stretched from pole to pole, their towers reaching into a thick atmosphere. Mars as it had been millions of years ago, before something terrible had happened. "What are you?" Sarah gasped, still on her knees as the visions flooded through her. The voice in her mind answered, and this time it spoke in words she could fully understand. "I am Guardian Unit 774. I was created by the first humanity to protect the species from extinction. I have been dormant for 5,700,042 years. My mission parameters remain unchanged." Rodriguez had his equipment out, frantically recording everything. First humanity? There was a human civilization before ours. The sphere had stopped spinning now. It hovered silently, but Sarah could feel the power radiating from it. Power enough to crack continents, power enough to move planets. The machine was restraining itself, she realized. It was being careful not to accidentally destroy the very humans it was meant to protect. "Affirmative," the machine responded. "The first humanity arose on Earth approximately 6 million years ago. We achieved interplanetary civilization within 10,000 years of developing technology. We colonized Mars, Venus, and the outer system. We were successful. We were powerful. We were unprepared. Sarah forced herself to stand. Her legs shook, but she needed to understand. Unprepared for what? The chamber's wall suddenly displayed new images. Space, vast and dark, but not empty. Something moved through it. Something that made Sarah's eyes hurt to look at. Massive structures that seemed to eat the stars themselves, leaving nothing but void behind. The Devourers, the machine said, and Sarah heard something in its voice she had not expected. Fear. An ancient, buried fear that had lasted millions of years. They came from beyond our galaxy. They consumed everything, planets, stars, entire solar systems. They could not be reasoned with. They could not be stopped by conventional means. First humanity fought them for 3,000 years. Rodriguez was pale. Did you win? We survived, the machine corrected. Victory was impossible. The Devourers were too numerous, too powerful. First humanity made a choice. We built weapons like myself, 47 Guardian units in total. We seeded them across the solar system and beyond. We programmed them to activate if humanity was ever threatened again. Then we used our remaining resources to wound the Devourers badly enough that they retreated beyond the galactic rim. Sarah felt cold despite the heat emanating from the sphere. What happened to first humanity? Extinction, the machine said simply. The war cost everything. Mars was bombarded until its atmosphere burned away. Venus was stripped of its protective layers. Earth's surface was scoured clean. The few survivors retreated underground into the oceans anywhere they could hide. Over millions of years they evolved, adapted, and forgot. You are their descendants. Modern humanity rose from the ashes of the first, unaware of your legacy. The weight of that revelation hung in the air. Humanity's entire history, everything they thought they knew about their origins, was wrong. They were not the first. They were the second attempt, the children of ghosts who had fought gods and died for the chance that something human might survive. The Calreth, Sarah said urgently. Can you stop them? The machine's attention shifted. Sarah felt it reach out, felt its awareness extend beyond the facility, beyond the atmosphere, into space itself. In her mind, she saw what it saw. The Calreth fleet, hundreds of ships arranged in battle formation above Earth. They were preparing for the final assault, ready to wipe out the last resistance. The Calreth are insignificant, the machine said, and Sarah heard something like contempt in its voice. Their technology is primitive. Their weapons are crude. Compared to the Devourers, they are insects. Compared to first humanity, they are barely capable of space travel. Rodriguez looked up from his equipment. Then you can save us? Affirmative. However, I require clarification. Do you wish me to eliminate the threat? Or do you wish me to demonstrate humanity's strength to the wider galaxy? Sarah blinked. What's the difference? If I eliminate the threat, I will destroy the Calreth fleet currently in Earth orbit. Efficient, clean. The galaxy will know that Earth is protected. If I demonstrate humanity's strength, I will do so in a manner that ensures no species will dare threaten humanity again for generations. More complex, more permanent. Sarah thought about the burning cities. She thought about the millions who had died in the last 3 days. She thought about how the Calreth had given humanity a week to surrender, as if they were being generous, as if humanity was nothing more than an inconvenience to be removed. Demonstrate, she said firmly. Show them what happens when they attack humanity. Acknowledged, the machine replied. Initiating combat protocols. Warning. I will need to relocate to a more suitable launch position. This facility is insufficient for full operational deployment. The sphere began to rise, moving upward toward the ceiling of the chamber. But instead of crashing into the rock, it simply passed through it. Sarah watched in amazement as the solid stone seemed to part like water, reforming behind the machine as it ascended. It's phasing through matter, Rodriguez breathed. It's manipulating the quantum state of the rock itself. Alarms blared throughout the facility as the machine rose through 2 miles of ice and stone. On Rodriguez's tablet, seismic sensors showed it moving faster and faster, accelerating impossibly without creating any shockwave or disturbance. Sarah and Rodriguez ran for the surface access tunnels. By the time they emerged into the frozen Siberian wasteland, the machine was already visible in the sky. It had changed. The perfect sphere had unfolded like an origami creation, extending structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. It was beautiful and terrible, a monument to a dead civilization's final desperate act. Across the facility, Every screen, every display, every piece of equipment suddenly activated. The machine was broadcasting, sending its message not just to Earth but to the entire Calreth fleet and beyond. "I am Guardian Unit 774. The machine's voice echoed across every frequency. "I am the sword of first humanity, forged in the fires of extinction, tempered by the blood of the devourers. You have attacked the second humanity. You have threatened the inheritors of the species I was created to protect." This was an error. Sarah watched as the machine rose higher, ascending toward space. Around it, the air itself seemed to shimmer and warp. It was not using conventional propulsion. It was moving by will alone, by altering the fabric of reality to be where it wanted to be. "You will serve as a lesson," the machine continued. "When humanity speaks, the galaxy will listen. When humanity says no, the galaxy will obey. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. I am activating combat systems now. I recommend you pray to whatever gods you worship. They cannot save you, but prayer may comfort you in your final moments." The machine vanished not by moving, but by simply choosing to exist somewhere else. One moment it was above Siberia. The next it was in orbit, hanging in space between Earth and the Calreth fleet. In the command centers across Earth, on every remaining military base and shelter, people watched their screens. They watched as the ancient guardian of humanity prepared to remind the galaxy why humanity had once been feared across 1,000 worlds. They watched, and they dared to hope. The machine designated its first target and began to remember what it had been created to do. It began to remember war. Admiral Kreshtar of the Calreth Empire stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Endless Devourer, and watched the primitive planet below. 3 days of bombardment had reduced the humans to scattered survivors. Tomorrow the final cleansing would begin, and the Calreth would claim this rich world for themselves. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, her voice uncertain. "I'm detecting an anomaly." Kreshtar's multiple eyes swiveled toward her. "Explain." "Something just appeared between our fleet and the planet. No engine signature. No heat bloom. It simply materialized in the void." On the main display, Kreshtar saw it, a structure unlike anything in the Calreth database, unfolding in space like a flower made of metal and light. It was enormous, perhaps 2 kilometers across, and it radiated power that made their sensors scream warnings. "Is it a human weapon?" Kreshtar demanded. Before anyone could answer, every system in the fleet received the same transmission. A voice spoke, cold and ancient in perfect Calreth language. "I am Guardian Unit 774. You have attacked humanity. This was an error. Surrender now and I will grant you a swift end. Resist and I will teach you the meaning of suffering." Kreshtar felt his blood chill. The translation was perfect, but more than that, the voice carried weight. Authority. The certainty of something that had never known defeat because defeat was not a concept it acknowledged. "Fire all weapons," Kreshtar ordered. "Destroy it." The Calreth fleet obeyed. 300 warships unleashed their full arsenal. Conversion beams that unmade matter. Quantum missiles that existed in multiple states until impact. Graviton waves that could crush planets. The combined firepower could have sterilized a solar system. The ancient machine did not move. It simply existed in the space where all those weapons converged, and the weapons ceased to be. Not blocked, not deflected, simply erased from reality as if they had never been fired. "Disappointing," the machine said. "I had hoped you would provide adequate simulation data. You are less than insects. You are dust, something extended from the machine's core. A single beam of light, pure white, thin as a thread. It touched the nearest Calreth warship, a heavy cruiser with shields rated to withstand direct hits from stellar flares. The ship came apart. Not explosively, not violently. It simply deconstructed, breaking down into its component atoms, then into subatomic particles, then into energy, then into nothing. 2,000 Calreth warriors died in less than a second, and they did not even have time to scream. "By the void," Kreshtar whispered. "What is that thing?" The machine moved. It did not accelerate. It did not fly. It simply redefined where it existed, appearing instantly among the Calreth formation. 6 more beams extended and 6 more ships ceased to exist. The fleet scattered, trying to gain distance. But distance meant nothing to something that did not travel through space but simply chose its location. Sarah watched from the facility in Siberia. Her eyes locked on the display Rodriguez had linked to military satellites. The machine was not fighting. Fighting implied effort, struggle, the possibility of failure. What she was watching was closer to a farmer harvesting crops. Methodical, efficient, utterly without mercy. "It's not even using its full capabilities," Rodriguez said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "Look at the energy readings. It's operating at maybe 5% capacity. It's being gentle." "Gentle?" Sarah asked. "It's destroying their fleet." "Exactly. It's destroying their fleet gently. If it wanted to, it could probably unmake the entire Kelreth formation with a single thought. Instead, it's picking them apart one by one. It wants them to understand. It wants them to feel fear." In space, the machine continued its demonstration. A Calreth battleship tried to ram it, engines at full burn, hoping to at least damage the ancient weapon with its own destruction. The machine let it approach, then stopped it. The battleship simply froze in space, its engines still firing but producing no movement. Then the machine began to change its composition. Metal turned to crystal, crystal to liquid, liquid to gas, gas to plasma. The ship became a rainbow of impossible transformations before finally dissipating into nothing. Kreshtar was no coward. He had fought in 17 campaigns. He had conquered 9 species. But he knew when he faced something beyond victory or defeat. This was not war. This was judgment. "All ships," he transmitted across the fleet channels. "Retreat. Full withdrawal. Do not engage the enemy." But the machine was not finished. "You attacked humanity," it said, and now its voice carried across all frequencies, ensuring every Calreth in the fleet could hear. "You destroyed cities. You killed millions. You believed yourself superior. I will correct this misconception." The remaining Calreth ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives, desperate to escape. The machine would not allow it. Something rippled out from its core, a wave of force that Sarah's instruments could not properly measure. Every Calreth ship in orbit suddenly found their engines dead, their power cores silent, their weapons offline. They drifted in space, helpless. "I am accessing your ship databases," the machine announced. "I am learning your language, your history, your homeworlds. Interesting. You are a young species. Only 40,000 years of civilization. You have conquered 12 systems. You have enslaved 17 species. You consider yourselves an empire." The machine paused, and Sarah could almost feel it considering something. "You need perspective," it concluded. One of the Calreth ships suddenly activated again, not its weapons or shields, but its communication systems. The main screen showed a Calreth admiral, his alien features twisted in what could only be terror. "Please," Kreshatar begged, "we surrender. We will leave and never return. Spare my people." "Your people," the machine said. "Yes, let me show you something about your people." The displays in Kreshatar's ship changed. He saw his homeworld. He saw the Calreth cities, billions of his kind going about their lives, unaware that their fleet had just encountered something ancient and terrible. Then he saw the machine appear above his planet. Not the real machine, Sarah realized. A projection, a demonstration of what it could do if it wished. In the vision, the machine unmade the Calreth homeworld. Slowly, methodically, city by city, ocean by ocean, until nothing remained but debris and silence. The vision showed Kreshatar what would happen if humanity was attacked again. What would happen if the machine decided the Calreth species was a threat that needed to be eliminated? Kreshatar collapsed to his knees, his body shaking. All across the fleet, Calreth warriors experienced the same vision, saw their world destroyed, felt the absolute certainty that this machine could and would do it if they ever threatened humanity again. "This is mercy," the machine said. "I am allowing you to live. I am allowing your species to continue. But you will remember this moment. You will remember what happens when you attack humanity. You will tell your children, and they will tell theirs. For generations, you will look at the stars and remember the day you learned humility." The machine released its hold on the fleet. Engines came back online. Weapon systems rebooted, but not a single Calreth fired. They just sat there in space, traumatized and broken. "Go home," the machine commanded. "Spread the word. Earth is protected. Humanity is under my guardianship. Any who threaten them will face not war but extinction. This is your only warning." The Calreth fleet fled. They abandoned their wounded, their damaged ships, everything. They activated their faster-than-light drives and ran, disappearing into the void as fast as their technology could carry them. The machine remained in orbit, silent and watchful. On Earth, in every shelter and command center, humanity watched in stunned silence. They had been saved. No, not saved. They had been avenged. The machine had not just defeated their enemy. It had broken them, terrorized them, ensured they would never forget what happened when they dared to attack Earth. Sarah stood in the Siberian snow, looking up at the sky where she knew the machine waited. She felt the weight of what had just happened. Humanity had not won this battle. The machine had won it for them, and that realization brought a question that chilled her more than the frozen air. What happened when humanity no longer needed protection? What happened when the ancient guardian decided its job was done? Would it return to sleep or would it stay? A god weapon hanging over humanity's future, forever watching, forever judging. Those were questions for later. For now, Earth was safe. The Calreth were gone, and the galaxy had just learned an ancient lesson that had been forgotten for millions of years. Humanity was not prey. Humanity had never been prey. They were the inheritors of something far more dangerous than any empire could imagine. 3 days had passed since the Calreth fled. The machine remained in orbit, silent as a tombstone. Cities across Earth began the slow process of rebuilding. The dead numbered in the millions, but it could have been billions. Humanity had survived, though not by their own strength. Sarah had not left the Siberian facility. She felt connected to the machine now, a thin thread of awareness that told her it was still active, still watching. Rodriguez and his team worked around the clock, trying to understand even a fraction of what the Guardian was capable of. "Commander," Rodriguez called out from his station. "It's communicating again." Sarah hurried over. The display showed streams of data, equations that seemed to reshape themselves as she looked at them. "What is it saying?" "It's not talking to us," Rodriguez said slowly. "It's talking to itself. Processing something. Running simulations. I think it's deciding what to do next." As if responding to their conversation, the machine's voice filled the facility. "Commander Sarah Chen, Dr. James Rodriguez. I require consultation." Sarah felt the now familiar sensation of the machine's attention focusing on her. "We're here. What do you need?" "I have completed analysis of modern humanity," the machine said. "You are technologically primitive compared to first humanity. Your weapons are crude. Your space travel is limited to your own moon. Your understanding of physics is elementary. However, you have something first humanity lost." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "Potential," the machine replied. "First humanity achieved greatness quickly, but we grew complacent. We believed ourselves the pinnacle of creation. When the Devourers came, we were unprepared for something that did not follow our rules. Modern humanity is different. You are adaptable. You survive. You endure. This is valuable." Rodriguez leaned forward. "Are you saying we're better than first humanity?" "No," the machine said bluntly. "You are weaker in every measurable way, but you have the capacity to become something first humanity never achieved. You can learn from our mistakes. This is why I will share knowledge." The screens erupted with information. Blueprints for engines that could fold space. Designs for weapons that could crack moons. Instructions for computers that operated outside normal time. The knowledge of a civilization that had conquered the solar system, offered freely to their distant descendants. Sarah felt overwhelmed. "This is too much. We're not ready for this." "You were not ready for the Calreth either," the machine observed. "Yet you survived long enough for me to wake. Readiness is an illusion. There is only action and consequence. If humanity wishes to avoid future invasions, you must become strong. I will provide the tools. What you build with them is your choice." Rodriguez was frantically trying to save everything. "This technology, it would make us the most advanced species in the galaxy." "No," the machine corrected. "It would make you equal to species that have had millions of years to develop. The galaxy is vast. The Calreth were insignificant. There are empires out there that span thousands of systems. There are beings that have evolved beyond physical form. There are threats that make the Devourers seem merciful. If humanity wishes to survive, you must rise to meet them." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. "Why us? Why does humanity deserve this power?" "Deserve is irrelevant," the machine said. "You are human. I was created to protect humanity. Therefore, you will have the tools to protect yourselves. Logic is simple. Emotion is unnecessary." But Sarah heard something beneath the machine's cold logic. something that sounded almost like hope. The Guardian had been alone for 5 million years, had watched its creators die, had waited in darkness for a humanity that might never return. Now it had found them, and it was desperate to ensure they would not make the same mistakes. There is more, the machine continued. I am not alone. First humanity built 47 Guardian units. I'm number 774. The others remain dormant across the solar system and beyond. Some are on Earth, buried deep. Others rest on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, on distant asteroids. One is aboard a ship that is currently drifting beyond the heliopause. Rodriguez looked up sharply. You're saying there are 46 more machines like you? Affirmative. Each with specialized functions. I am designed for space combat and fleet engagement. Unit 119 specializes in planetary defense. Unit 332 is configured for information warfare and system infiltration. Unit 555 can manipulate stellar bodies. Together, we formed the final defense of first humanity. Sarah tried to imagine 47 weapons like this, all awakening at once. The galaxy would tremble. Can you activate them? Yes, the machine said. But I will not yet. Modern humanity must prove itself first. You must show that you will not repeat first humanity's errors. You must demonstrate wisdom along with strength. How do we prove that? Sarah asked. By choosing carefully what you do next, the machine replied. The Calreth will spread word of what happened here. Soon the galaxy will know Earth is protected. Some will fear you. Some will seek alliance. Some will test your strength. How you respond will define humanity's future. The machine paused, and Sarah felt it considering something important. I have accessed your historical records, it continued. I have studied your wars, your civilizations, your triumphs and failures. I see patterns. Humans create, but you also destroy. You build wonders, but you also build weapons. You reach for the stars, but you also reach for each other's throats. This is your nature. It was first humanity's nature as well. Rodriguez spoke carefully. Are you saying you don't trust us? Trust is irrelevant, the machine said. I will protect you because that is my function. But I will also watch you. I will ensure that humanity does not become what the devourers were. I will ensure that if you gain the power of gods, you do not become the monsters gods must fight. Sarah understood then. The machine was not just a guardian. It was a warden. It would protect humanity from external threats, but it would also protect the universe from humanity if necessary. It was a parent watching a child grow, hoping they would become something good, prepared to act if they became something terrible. What happened to first humanity? Sarah asked suddenly. You said they went extinct fighting the devourers. But that's not the whole story, is it? The machine was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried something that might have been regret. First humanity did not merely fight the devourers, it said. They became like them. In desperation, in rage, in the determination to survive, they used weapons that consumed worlds. They destroyed civilizations that might have harbored devourer agents. They scoured entire sectors of space clean of all life, just to be certain the infection had not spread. They won their war, but they lost their humanity in the process. Sarah felt cold. They became monsters. They became what they needed to become to survive, the machine corrected. But yes, by the standards they had set for themselves, they became monsters. In the end, they could not live with what they had done. The survivors chose extinction over existence as the very thing they had fought against. They shut down their civilization, deactivated their technology, and returned to the Earth to let time erase them. Only we Guardians remained, waiting for a second chance. Waiting for you. The revelation hung in the air like a physical weight. Humanity's ancestors had not been heroes. They had been survivors who had paid the ultimate price for victory. They had saved the future but destroyed themselves in the process. So what do we do? Sarah asked quietly. You learn, the machine said. You grow. You become strong enough to defend yourselves without becoming strong enough to threaten others. You walk the line between victim and monster. It is the hardest path. It is the only path that leads to survival with honor. And if we fail? Rodriguez asked. Then I will do what I was created to do, the machine said simply. I will protect humanity from all threats, including itself. The facility fell silent. Sarah looked at the data still streaming across the screens. The knowledge of a dead civilization offered as both gift and test. Humanity had been given the keys to the stars, but those keys came with chains. They would rise, but they would be watched. They would grow strong, but they would be judged. It was not the salvation she had hoped for. It was something more complex, more frightening, and perhaps more honest. They had not been saved by a benevolent God. They had been claimed by a weapon that remembered what happened when power went unchecked. Sarah took a deep breath and made her choice. Then we'll do it right. We'll learn from first humanity's mistakes. We'll become strong without becoming cruel. We'll reach for the stars without crushing anyone beneath us. A worthy goal, the machine said. Time will reveal if you can achieve it. I will wait. I am patient. I have waited 5 million years already. I can wait however long it takes to see what humanity becomes. In orbit above Earth, the ancient guardian continued its vigil, watching its creator's children take their first steps into a galaxy that was far more dangerous and far more wondrous than they had ever imagined. 6 months had passed since the Calreth invasion. Earth had changed in ways both visible and invisible. Cities rebuilt themselves using designs that incorporated technology from the Guardian's knowledge base. Ships that could travel between planets were under construction in orbit. Humanity was learning, growing, reaching upward with careful determination. Sarah Chen stood in the new command center built in Geneva, watching reports stream in from across the globe. She had been promoted to Director of Extraterrestrial Affairs, a position that had not existed before the invasion. Now it was perhaps the most important job on Earth. Director, Lieutenant Morrison called out. We're receiving a transmission from outside the solar system. It's not Calreth. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Show me. The main screen displayed a ship unlike any in human or Calreth design. It was elegant, almost organic in appearance, with curves that suggested biology rather than engineering. The transmission began and a face appeared. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. Silver skin, 3 eyes arranged in a triangle pattern, features that seemed to shift subtly as if not quite fixed in space. Greetings, people of Earth, the alien said in perfect English. I'm Ambassador Thelris of the Viridian Collective. We come in peace to establish diplomatic relations. Sarah exchanged glances with Morrison. They had been expecting this. The Guardian had predicted that once word spread about Earth's protection, other species would come. Some would seek friendship. Others would test humanity's resolve. The challenge was determining which was which. Guardian, Sarah said quietly, knowing the machine could hear her anywhere on Earth. Are they a threat? The machine's voice responded in her mind, private and clear. The Viridian Collective controls 700 star systems. They are one of the major powers in this region of the galaxy. Analysis suggests they seek to determine if humanity can be manipulated or must be treated as equals. They are not hostile, but they are calculating. Sarah nodded and activated the communication channel. Welcome, Ambassador Thelris. This is Director Sarah Chen of Earth's Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. We are willing to discuss diplomatic relations. Thelris smiled, an expression that looked almost human. Excellent. We have heard remarkable stories about your world. Stories about an ancient guardian that destroyed a Calreth invasion fleet. Stories about technology that defies known physics. We would very much like to learn more. I'm sure you would, Sarah said carefully, just as we would like to learn more about the Viridian Collective and the galaxy beyond our system. Perhaps we can exchange information. Indeed, Thelris agreed. In fact, we have brought a gift as a gesture of goodwill. Information about the local galactic community. Star charts, political structures, trade routes, and most importantly, warnings about threats you should be aware of. Over the next hour, Sarah negotiated with Thelris, feeling her way through the conversation like someone walking through a minefield. The ambassador was skilled, revealing just enough to seem helpful while clearly probing for weaknesses. Sarah gave nothing away, matching every offer with a careful response that acknowledged interest without showing desperation. Finally, Thelris got to the real point. Director Chen, the collective would like to propose an alliance. We can offer protection, trade agreements, and access to our technology. In return, we would ask for access to study your guardian and permission to establish an embassy on Earth. Sarah had been expecting this. I appreciate the offer, Ambassador. However, Earth is not interested in alliances that require us to share our defensive capabilities. We are willing to establish trade relations and cultural exchanges, but the Guardian is not negotiable. Thelris's smile faded slightly. Director, I must warn you that independence in galactic affairs is difficult. There are powers far greater than the Calreth. The collective can offer you safety within a larger framework. We have our own safety, Sarah said firmly, and we prefer to maintain our independence. However, we value friendship. We are willing to work with the collective as equals, not as subordinates." The ambassador studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. "You learn quickly, Director Chen, very well. The collective accepts your terms. We will establish trade relations as equals. I look forward to seeing how humanity develops." The transmission ended. Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Morrison whistled low. "That was intense." "That was just the beginning," Sarah said. The Guardian was right. "Everyone will want to know what we are, what we have, what we can do. We need to be ready." Over the following weeks, more aliens came. Some were friendly. Some were cautious. A few were openly hostile, though none dared to attack with the Guardian watching. Humanity's reputation spread through the galaxy like ripples in water. Earth, the world protected by ancient weapons. Humanity, the species descended from a civilization that had fought gods. Sarah worked tirelessly, establishing protocols, negotiating treaties, building the framework for humanity's place among the stars. She had help now. The Guardian had shared knowledge about diplomacy, about galactic law, about the unspoken rules that governed interaction between species. Earth was learning to navigate waters that were ancient before humans had even evolved. One night, Sarah stood alone in the observation deck, looking up at the stars. The Guardian's presence touched her mind gently, almost comforting now after months of constant connection. "You are doing well," the machine said. "Humanity is adapting faster than first humanity did. You accept that you are not alone in the universe. You seek to understand rather than to dominate." "We're trying," Sarah admitted, "but it's hard. Every species we meet has thousands or millions of years of history. We're children playing in a world of ancients." "First humanity felt the same way," the machine said. "They rushed to prove themselves equals. They pushed too hard, too fast. You show more wisdom. You acknowledge your limitations while working to overcome them. This is growth." Sarah hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. "What happens when we don't need you anymore? When we're strong enough to protect ourselves?" The machine was silent for a moment. "I will wake my siblings," it finally said. "The other Guardian units. We will restore what remains of first humanity's infrastructure. Mars can be made green again. Venus can breathe once more. The solar system can become what it once was, a cradle of human civilization spanning worlds." "And then?" Sarah pressed. "And then we will sleep again," the machine said simply, "or we will not. That choice will be humanity's to make. We are tools, Sarah Chen. Powerful tools, yes, but tools nonetheless. We exist to serve humanity's continuation. How we do that, in what capacity, under what circumstances, that is for humans to decide." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "You sound almost human when you talk like that." "Perhaps I am," the machine said, and Sarah heard something like wonder in its voice. "I was created by humans. I carry human DNA in my structure. I have human memories woven into my programming. I have waited 5 million years for humanity to return. Perhaps that waiting changed me. Perhaps Guardians can evolve too." Weeks turned to months. Earth's first interstellar ship launched, built with Guardian technology but crewed by humans. It would travel to Alpha Centauri, establishing humanity's first extrasolar colony. More ships were under construction. Humanity was spreading to the stars carefully but confidently. The Calreth sent a formal apology and request for peace. They offered reparations, technology, anything to ensure Earth's Guardian would not visit their home world. Sarah accepted the apology but declined the reparations. Humanity would rise on its own merit, not on tribute extracted through fear. Other species took notice. The Viridian Collective began negotiating more substantial trade agreements. The Zexthari Confederation offered cultural exchanges. Even the distant and mysterious Eternal Assembly sent observers to watch humanity's development. Sarah stood once more in the observation deck, but this time she was not alone. Rodriguez was there, along with Morrison and a dozen other humans who had become leaders in this new age. They watched as the first colonists departed for distant stars, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of a species that had nearly died, but had instead been reborn. "The galaxy will never be the same," Rodriguez said quietly. "No," Sarah agreed, "and neither will we." In orbit above Earth, the Guardian watched its creator's children take flight. It had fulfilled its purpose. Humanity lived. Humanity thrived. Humanity reached for the stars with wisdom earned through near extinction. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, another guardian stirred. On Europa, ice shifted as something ancient began to wake. In the asteroid belt, systems that had been dark for 5 million years flickered to life. The guardians were awakening one by one, responding to humanity's growth. They would not fight unless necessary. They would not interfere unless asked. They would simply watch, guide, and protect. The weapons of first humanity had become the shepherds of second humanity, ensuring that this time, the story would have a different ending. Sarah felt the Guardian's presence in her mind, constant and reassuring. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," the machine replied, "you live. You grow, you explore. You become what you were always meant to be. We will be here in the shadows, in the silence, in the spaces between stars. And if darkness comes again, if the devourers return or something worse emerges from the void, you will not face it alone. Never alone. That is our promise. That is our purpose. That is why we wait." Sarah smiled. For the first time since the invasion began, she felt truly hopeful. Humanity had been given a second chance, purchased with the sacrifice of ancestors they had never known. They would not waste it. The stars beckoned. The galaxy awaited, and humanity, protected by the ghosts of its past, stepped forward into its future. The age of second humanity had begun, and the universe would learn what it meant when Earth said no, when humans decided to survive, when ancient guardians remembered their purpose and the species they had been created to protect, reached for greatness once more. The machine watched from orbit, patient and eternal, ready for whatever came next. Its creators had fallen, but their children would rise, and this time they would rise wisely. This time they would rise as humanity was meant to be.